Hey, Thrand here. I notice I have two people here. I don't know exactly how this works. We had to install Google Chrome earlier just to use it. And the only thing I'm noticing about this, I don't know if the feeds that I linked on Facebook, like in the ThegnThrand YouTube boat crew, in Thrand's Well of Remembrance. Hi, Kay. I'm just going to call you Kay. I can't pronounce all the other letters. Hello. Hey. Uh, but what I'm wondering is if it's actually connecting to the original feed that I'm setting up, that it's telling everybody about, and that I'm advertising, or is this a separate one that I'm creating when I open the camera? Really confused on that. I'm sorry if it's causing any kind of confusion or you're having trouble finding the actual live feed. I plan on being on for exactly 1 hour earlier, or like maybe a little more, maybe go 1 hour and 30 minutes, but it just ended abruptly. I mean, it just wouldn't rebuffer. It kept saying it was connecting. So I figured it's a Sunday. I'm not shooting a video at the current time. I'm just working on some editing. So it's Brad Lynn. He's doing a video for us right now. Our digital artist and our graphics artist. You can find him at Facebook, by the way, if you all want to see some of the stuff he does. It's more fantasy and some of his drawings and artwork. It's awesome. Brad Lynn over on Facebook. Andrew Bowler. Hey, how you doing today, man? He's done a couple episodes with us. He's actually come over and worked back with Elton with us. He's a good friend of his, and mine as well. But I mean, he came by and he helped us do some camera work. I know. I wish there was more light. I am sorry. This is about the best lighting I have right now. Maybe I can adjust it a little better. Let's try not to bleach everything out. Is that a little better? Or it's not really a studio that I'm doing this. I'm just doing this in front of my laptop, you know. And it's not with our highest grade cameras. This is just our little webcam that I and Caddy used to talk to relatives and stuff. Oh, thank you. Said it's better. I guess I did well. Yeah. So hopefully you can see me better now. Scout. Oh yeah, the two blades that Andy Bowler here is talking about are actually the Deadpool swords. He got a hold of these swords, and he was expected to be a lot higher quality. They're not super high quality, but they're cheaper productions. But they look like the Deadpool swords. I actually had those in one of the videos in the background and said something about testing them. I still plan on doing some testing on swords like that. If you all want to see that, let me know. Tell me. If you want to see cheap swords, and I shouldn't say cheap, but like the stuff you would get at flea markets, like you order online, just but tested fully and see what they do. Do they break? Do they hold up? Just to compare them, to have an idea. If I had this thing in my house and it was sharpened up and somebody broke in, could it even help me? Or of course, it's probably not going to stand up to battles like actual, ancient combat or something. But just to see how well it performs, it would be actually fun. He wanted us to test those out. I was going to ham it up and maybe have him over and do a Deadpool episode. We never did that. Like when the new movie's coming out, I wanted one of the morph suits, or something. I probably can't afford good cosplay stuff, and like ham it up and do a lot of funny stuff with it. So it'd probably be fun. If I had a good Deadpool suit, it'd be a lot more fun. This is. I know some people don't like that. They hate it when we do anything like that. I've noticed that. We had the real Nerf Joker on a long time ago, who's another YouTuber from here in the area, and believe it or not, he's a big figure. A lot of people know this Corpus Christi Joker, and he goes to all the Hooks, our baseball teams, games and stuff, and shows up there. He's almost like a mascot, even though he's not. He does all these appearances and stuff for charity and stuff. And he's a good friend of mine locally. I meant to run into him at the RealmsCon and have him in the video, but I didn't know his booth was upstairs, so we ended up not getting that footage when I was there. So sorry, I apologize for that. But yeah, as I noticed that we did some episodes like that where I tried to cut the Nerf dart in half and do a collaboration thing with his channel and get maybe him a few subscribers if anybody's interested in cosplaying and Nerf guns. I know that doesn't really go with our channel, but it was kind of fun. Try to cut the Nerf dart in two, which didn't work because the Nerf darts are so light, even though I did hit it. And we let him destroy one of our heads with his cold steel neopropylene, I think it is, Native American War Club, and his shillelagh and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. It did a lot of damage to the head. It was pretty amazing. That stuff is for stuff normally illegal and you carry around anywhere because it's considered like a nightstick, I guess, like a police officer would have or something. It's pretty cool. Yeah, cheap sword's a really good idea. I got that from Kyle Baines. Oh, you can ask a question now. I want to mess your name up. I can just call you Cuba, maybe. Cuba. Lasauri Cuba. I hope I said it right. So what do you think a 2.5 kg, 160 centimeter Mondante or Claymore be able to beat aside a parrying longsword if user swings it with full force and it's a stiff blade for cutting, not a flexible one? And you say a longsword, or are you talking you're talking a two-hander, right? The longsword's a two-hander as well. It's just a lighter blade, not a great sword. Or a claymore. Claymore is not a late century great sword like a Mondante. A claymore is, there's arguments whether they're bearing swords, but I believe some were used. I really do. We at least know there was early period, what is known as an early period great sword, like in the 13th century. And yes, yeah, they were used because mail became full coverage. From the early Viking age on, they kept, as you have the Normans go into England, and you end up with the Connects or the Knights from that time period, and they become full-fledged knights, you get full coverage. I mean, around the 11th century, we've got like mail from head to toe, chain hose and feet, mitts made into the hauberk, the hoods, I mean, the works, everything's covered in mail. So one of the solutions is try to thrust through it. There's no guarantee you could thrust through it, but yeah, make tapered stiff blades and taper them more and possibly thrust through it with your sword if you're using a sword. Another method is to make a cutting sword using a hand and a half or two-handed, adding more weight to the blades and try to, and we're not talking extreme weight. These are not heavy like movie swords or something, you know, like Conan, but just add more mass to it, so, and more cutting ability. So possibly if you don't cut somebody, you don't have an opponent who's lightly armored and can cut through their cloth or padding, what have you, then you could possibly break a shoulder or something, you know, or injure the guy anyway, hit him in the side of the head where his helmet doesn't cover him, break his jaw, what have you, knock him out. So there were two different concepts. I mean, one's cutting, one's thrusting. Swords favored both. You know, some swords are used more for unarmored combat, or more favored for it, or some swords are more favored for armored combat. So, you know, we don't know exactly every detail, just the surviving examples that we have from drawings and information that we're told. But what I was going to say to you is, I think the longsword, if it's two-handed as well, can parry it. I don't think it would, unless the blade failed in some way or the construction of the sword, I think it would be able to, if you parried it properly, it could parry the blade or stop the force. But generally, you don't want to try to slam the blades into each other full force. So you're going to be trying to absorb the blow. If you want to do some kind of testing like that in the future, we might be able to, if you're interested in it. Kuba is fine. All right. Sorry, I hope I didn't mispronounce your first name. It's not like you could tell me through here. I wish it worked that way where you could interact and just tell me how to pronounce it properly. But I hope I answered the question well enough, and I'll try to test it later. Right. Zweihander is different than a claymore. The claymore is a heavy blade, and it's within longsword proportions. But due to the weight, most people do not classify them. I mean, some people classify them as longswords, but some people do not. So it can be within the longsword classification, and then it can have its own classification as a claymore. And that's why some, or that type of Scottish sword, where they end up saying, some people say it's a parrying sword. They didn't find it from the Some look like maybe they were just big swords and they didn't look as functional, and others we found look extremely functional. So I believe that they were used depending on the blade you're speaking about, because there are bearing swords throughout history where someone had something made they didn't really use. It's just there. And some of them are status symbols, and yes, they will embellish and overdo them. Some of them will have like all the types of ornate work on them that you probably wouldn't see on a battlefield sword, or you might, depending on the Viking Age. They did a lot of inlay of silver and stuff, because they love their blades, and so it just depends. But the Claymore, just to bring it up one more time, is not a late century greatsword. It's akin to the early period, like the 13th century style, what they consider greatswords from that time period. They were heavier, two-handed blades, like I believe they're type. I'm getting wrong, but like type 10 B, or I'm not sure. I get them confused because they do change it around a bit in the typology. I think the two-handed was type B, type 10. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I'm all out of it. Type 13B, I believe, is the two-handed. Type 13 is the hand and a half, and type 13A, I believe, is the arming sword version from that time period. I believe. Don't get me wrong, but I mean the style of sword, the blade style, from around the 13th century. But then it can also be, it carries on, and a little before there's a crossover. It's not a set time period. That's what people get wrong. The types exist within different time periods. You can find a type 10 blade later century, or type 12, so on. They're out of place, out of time sometimes, and some of them are earlier blades that got passed down and hilts changed out. So you'll see later century hilts and designs on earlier blades and so forth. Slingshot Warrior. Hi, Thrand. Hey, Slingshot Warrior. We could try to test it, Kuba. We will try to test it. I'll see what I can do. If I put enough mail on it, put on the proper stuff, and we do it properly, and it's safely done, it can probably be tested without anybody getting hurt. It might not even be the appropriate armor for the period, because I might not have all that available, but appropriate armor for proper defense or against what's going on in case something goes wrong. Yeah, bearing swords, Nicholas Holmes. Yeah, I don't get the appeal either, but there's a lot of people who buy stuff like that nowadays just because they like the way it looks, and people did stuff like that back then too. Some people might have a certain design of something that was an anomaly, and it might not have been used, or it might have been used because they just had a weird preference and that's the way they had it made. So everything wasn't coming from a factory. They didn't just, oh, we're going to make this type of sword, so everybody's going to own this specific type of blade. Stamp, 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 all the pieces, the fittings and stuff. Everything was made by hand and handcrafted. And if you look at the originals, like I was at the Ewart Oakshott Institute in Eagan, Minnesota, or actually in Minneapolis, near Eagan, Minnesota, where I went up there to Ausflug Viking martial arts. And I went there with Arthur von Eschen and Roland Vorzenka, or Dimmercounter, a lot of people know him as that. We noticed that, and you're looking at it, the quill, one will be slightly longer than the other, and you expect it to be uniform. The pommel, although it's ornate and decorative, will be totally even. If you look at it, you can tell it's handmade. You can tell that the original artifacts from back in the day are not perfectly symmetrical. And I don't think that was their goal either. It was all done by hand, and they didn't even use measuring tools normally. That was not their goal. Their goal was to make a functional blade that held up and did what it was supposed to. So if it was a hair off, it wasn't going to make that big a difference, and it was them working by hand. So that was a lot hard. I mean, it was still difficult to produce what they produced, though. I know a little Old Norse, like I can read it and interpret it. We don't know exactly what it sounds like from back in the day. I tried to recreate it myself, but I wouldn't sit here and try to carry on a conversation with you. It's mostly so I can understand old texts and references and the thought process. Kukuri? Mr. and Mrs. Moraes. Moraes. I don't know how you pronounce your name. So. Testa Himalayan imports. Kola Kukuri. If I get a hold of one, I would. That's the problem. Right now, our channel's not doing as well as it would. Normally, it sustains itself from the monetization. We're getting up near 44,000 subscribers, and that happened a while back. We're at 45,000 right now. We were getting more and more monetization money coming in. After the ad apocalypse, that hurt us badly because people are able to opt out of channels like ours because they find them controversial or violent, and it depends on whatever YouTube decides we are. The person themselves clicking these little tags, the company saying they don't want to advertise with us, may have never seen the channel. I saw it, thought it was great, but they don't know. They're just clicking a tag into whatever the actual algorithm or bot labels us. There's so many channels, they don't do it individually themselves, and they still have the same process going on for each video. So the problem is we don't have the funds that we normally do just to keep producing videos and it sustain itself. Every time I put a video out, I get enough money back, but it kind of helps produce the next video and so on for the month. We're not even getting the views we used to get. So something's going on with the algorithm where I don't know if people are getting the notifications or they're just flooding so much stuff in that maybe if they are getting the notifications, they're not even seeing it because of the way it works now. They got the new bell system. So be sure and hit the bell down below. I don't know if it helps if you want to watch the videos. We're not supposed to tell you to click on things and do things, but I'm saying if for some reason you want to make sure you think you're subscribed and want to get notifications for the channel, hit the bell. Maybe it'll help. I don't know. But lots of people are complaining that it's not helping. But like I said, if we could afford one and I could, or they send me one for testing or review, I would be more than happy to test the Kukri. I really do like the blades. They remind me of the old Copus or the earlier Falcata. They're the same kind of design blade. I mean, they say they're not related, but that design is just a good design. It's a good form of blade that is a cross or hybrid between a sword and a like an axe or cutting tool. And it also has the curvature of a saber type idea where you have the slicing ability too. So it's very, very nice. I'm sorry, I'm trying to stop for a second to read stuff so I can answer people. Oh, Jackson Crawfords. I watch his channel, and I do listen to him, and yeah, I enjoy it very much. I should actually contact the man. He lives up north of us here in the States. I should contact him and see if we can do some kind of collaboration or something some way. I don't know how that would work because I don't know if he'd be interested in the type of experimental archaeology or type of testing I do or reviews I do. But I mean, I could talk with him and see what happens. And that might be entertaining. Maybe see his views of combat in the sagas and have me try to recreate something that he wants done, you know, because he doesn't actually do the reenactment thing as far as I know. He doesn't do anything living history reenactment, HEMA, or anything like that. Okay, somebody brought up, Kuba brought up the SCA. Sorry, I see one message here. I don't know if there's a translation for it, but I can't read it. If anybody can read it, let me know. The SCA, sorry, the SCA about hitting the legs. If I can get my throat cleared. Okay, but the SCA, we're talking a long time from earlier, so forget it. But the SCA from hitting the legs, you're not supposed to hit from the knee down. Now, the knee is not a legal target because, of course, the knee can be damaged. And people wear various types of armor because you want to get as many people on the field as possible. So saying a perfect knee cop or a perfect knee protection, even though you might think it is, it might not be, we don't allow the knee to be hit. But anything above the knee, if you're in the Society of Korean Anachronism, is a legal target. You could technically hit somebody in the crotch, and everybody's supposed to be wearing a cup or some kind of codpiece protection for that area, but that's just frowned upon males. Women will hit there. So yes, you can thrust there, you can hit the thigh. The knee can be hit, but it's usually not considered a legal blow. And that's because protection of the knee, and then from the leg down, it's not required to wear greaves or any kind of shin protection. One of the reasons why is the Society of Creative Anachronism does go all the way to the plate era, where that was common. And some people do earlier personas that aren't necessarily part of the SCA that would have greaves. But in the Viking Age and so on, there's a lot of time periods where people weren't wearing a lot of leg protection other than maybe a wickelbander or Winnengoss or something like that, wrappings, leg wrappings that we know of. They may have had other stuff on that we don't know of, okay? Or people were just having mail in that area. They were wearing chain hose. We don't know what they wore under it or if they had any reinforcements. It's mostly just surviving drawings and stuff, or effigies and so on. So they don't require the shin armor in regular combat, or the leg armor for that part. So that's why the feet and the shin are not legal. But with polearms and long weapons such as that, I agree that could be a target. When you're doing with swords, fighting with swords, and you both have about the same length swords, and you go to engage each other, it's very rare that you'd be hitting down that low. Because if I can get in and hit that low to hit you in the shin, unless my shield just happened to be in and I stepped in real quick and did it properly, did it an all one move thing, which would be a really off the wall trying to get that close to the guy and hit that low, because you've got an angle going down with the sword blade where you have to move it very, very close to do it. It's not that common. You're not going to see that sword fencing or unarmored like in HEMA. You're not going to see a lot of those shin shots if two people are squaring off with in buckler combat. Just not that common, because you're getting hit somewhere else trying to get that shot, trying to get that blow or that cut into the shin. And the shin's not going to just cut clean through with an edge. You'd have to have a tremendous blow, too. I mean, that's the other thing. You'd have to cut through the actual bone to make it an effective cut. Otherwise, you'd just be cutting the man's, cutting across the shin, which I'm sure would hurt really bad, but it wouldn't be that effective. But a polearm or something, yes, I agree. We see people who have, I believe, was it Visby? I think it was Visby. We see people who have their legs, and we believe it was polearms or swords, possibly, but most likely polearms, or a great sword, or some sort of larger sword, that cut through both shins completely through. I mean, like from one and the other. But I say a polearm because of the length. You would need to stay back and have the proper angle to cut there, and be able to defend and get that cut in at the same time. It's probably a polearm that cut the guy across both legs at the same time. So, but the SCA, it's not legal just because of that reason, because not everybody's required to wear it. I don't take it too long here, but they have high persona tournaments, and the high persona tournaments require, if they're later century tournaments, if they require greaves, like either full greaves or regular greaves, then yeah, they allow shin hits. But those are only in high persona tourneys. I haven't seen a lot of those, and a lot of it has to do with just it's not a required piece of armor. And it's mostly, I mean, other than the wars and stuff, it is based on single combat, so they just don't want people aiming at people's ankles, which are very even with sabatons, and greaves are hard to protect, knees hard to protect. But on the other hand, if you were trying to mess somebody up with, hit at him with a staff or something, the knee is a great place to hit. If you hit somebody with any kind of, even back when I was in Eskrima or an S, they talked about targets to hit with sticks. You're fighting with sticks. The knee and kneecap, yes, we'll take a person out if it's a serious fight. It's life or death quickly. The elbows are good spots, and that's things we have to protect. Although they are legal to hit, because we have to have good arm protection. Those are like good targets, any joint area like that. So, sorry, I hope I answered that one correctly. I mean, so you get it. It's just mostly so they can have people out there and fight. And shins are not as common of a target anyway. You wouldn't be exploiting them very often, except maybe, if you think about a spear thrust to the shin, even without leg protection, if you had lots of wrapping on it or something, there's a good chance the spear, unless it hits right in the center of the bone, would glance and probably not cut very much, because the way the shin shape is facing you. Cutting, yes, that's another story. If you have enough force, axe, polearm, poleaxe, something like that, a great sword that has a longer reach, like a late century Mondante or something, yeah, you could take a guy's going to go down just like a tree or something if you go through that shin. Pirate metal, anything goes. Welcome, Thrand. I got lots of pirate metal. That sounds entertaining. Yar. I'll have to check that out. I've already been on almost 30 minutes. I didn't plan on staying on this long this time, but I got quite a few viewers. Greetings from Iceland. Y'all. Gilmore. Okay, his name. Somebody answered about his pirate medal. I'm just looking to see what everybody's asking. If I didn't answer something, don't feel like you're spamming. Feel free to put it up if I didn't see it. Something happened and it rolled up. I'll try to answer everything real quick. I felt bad about it cutting off early. Oh, I'm not even up to date on what's going on here. Irish cane fighting. Irish cane fighting. Sure. We could do something like that. That would be an interesting video to do. I did do a shillelagh a while back because I got inspired to do it. I knew it was the St. Patty's Day. So everybody's celebrating that. And I was out and about. And then we have, I know they're all made out of root wood. Okay. Blackthorn. And yeah, not materials from here. But Native Americans used to use the root wood from mesquite trees from the same region to make the same kind of clubs. So my idea was I kind of got inspired just to, of course, I didn't dig up root wood and make it because you have to wait for that to dry out and stuff. What I did is I took a piece of green mesquite, and a lot of times this was done too, where you find a piece where you can cut it and you get that knot. And instead of finishing it out, I didn't finish it out much or anything. I just used that on one of the heads in the episode. It worked really well. So you can see if you applied something like that with proper techniques, the one I had is a little short and more like a cudgel, like a mace, right? Which they use those as well. But they also have longer versions that are more like using a staff or a jo or a bow, a hambo. In Japanese, they have half staff or the 4-foot jo. They have techniques where you use it more like that to parry and defend. And they incorporate the Irish cane fighting. If I'm saying incorporates sword techniques and other types of techniques that were used with pole arms and stuff all into one art, but just using the smaller stick, which is mostly what the Japanese did when they did the same thing with the hambo, which means half bow or half staff, the rakushaka bow, the one that's 6 feet long. And then the jo is a different weapon entirely, but it's the same kind of thing. The art was supposed to be based around the guy deciding that, this, I can't remember his exact name, but the guy deciding that this weapon could represent all the other weapons and you could utilize all the techniques and it'd be more fluid than, switching weapons. So the whole idea of that is, I could train with a stick to use other weapons, but then when you get done learning all the other weapons and getting proficient with them, you can still go back to that stick and still kick some butt pretty much. So it's really a great thing. And anybody can carry a stick or find one anywhere to defend yourself with. So yeah, we do something like that. I'll look into it, see what I can do on it. I know a lot more about some of the Japanese arts with it, but I know a lot of techniques are kind of crossover as well. When you whack them. Okay, here we go. Nathan Norman, hello from Wales. I have 3 questions. Have you ever used a Cossack saber? Saber, Shaska. Sorry, I'm trying to read it. Have I ever used a Cossack saber? No, never. Know about the sabers. I heard that recently from Neil Burridge that somehow sabers or curved swords are illegal now or something in the UK, which I know knives are now. I've heard this, that you can't even carry a pocket knife. And I find it kind of odd because Texas went to from 3.5-inch blades where I'm at and folding, and it has to be displayed or something like that in the city, to having to follow the rules Texas has set, which is 5.5 inches, and it can be a straight blade, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be displayed, right, which was Texas' original rule. And then they changed it to where we can't, the city can't follow a different code. It has to be that, whatever their code is, and then they changed their code to unlimited. So you can carry swords, spears, anything like that. But I don't know, on the actual saber itself, I haven't used one. I've used different forms of sabers, and I like sabers. If I could get a hold of one and test it out, I'm trying to think if there's anything different about the actual saber than usual sabers, the curvature or the shape. I know I've seen them. Never actually really handled one on. That's what I was saying. I would love to answer your question on them. That one, I'm glad no one paid to have that one answered because I wouldn't know how to exactly answer it without doing some research or testing on it. The SCA rules on flails. They're not legal, and you'll hear all these strange stories, the nunchuka or flails and all these type of weapons. When you swing them, generate so much more force that they shatter skulls easily and split coconuts and all this great kind of stuff. It's just the free swing. It's just the same as anything else. It's a free swing, but there's no force behind it when you impact to, like, stiffen your body and everything and kind of put a solidity to it. It's just how much speed you can get. Yes, you can accelerate something by spinning and spinning and spinning it and then hitting, which is using so you can get more force behind it other than just a free swing, one swing. It's like using a centrifugal force, centrifugal force, like using a sling. Yes, you can generate more energy if you're allowed to wind up and keep swinging it, and get a lot of energy behind it and then hit. But that's not the reason it's not illegal in the SCA. There's ways to make that safe, but the problem is normally people put a cord or a chain on it, and the most common thing they would probably use in the SCA, because chains would be even more damaging. If they wrap around something, I don't know if anybody's ever noticed a chain will actually grip and pull tight. So if you use a real chain, then it will get tangled on things and pull tight easier with the weight holding over if it wraps a couple of times if it's long, and therefore you could pull on somebody's arm, it could get around their neck, it could attach to their armor in some way where you're yanking and pulling on their chin strap on their neck. So what they try to say is, this is what I've heard. I mean, we haven't done the testing or anything. I just know what I've been told from the society itself, that it could injure somebody by hurting their neck, getting tangled on their armor, and then trying to yank it back. They were afraid of that kind of thing. The actual. So I always thought, why not have just a 2-ring pivot? So that's a flail, because they do have some like that historically. They're just a couple of rings. You still get the flail from it when, like, on a long flail, like they used to beat grains with and stuff, and they use them sometimes for pole arms. And sometimes they added spikes to them and stuff, so they modified it as a weapon. You only need a couple of rings or maybe 3, and that wouldn't really wrap around anything. But they still don't allow it. I don't know why. I know they'd be a lot easier to get around shields. If you had to call that, like when it hits you solid and it went over the top of your shield, can you picture trying to parry that thing? It'd be trying to put your sword back. You'd be trying to hold your shield higher, which would open more areas of your body, for other people attacking if it was in a melee. I think they would be superior in trying to get around shields and certain types of parrying. But I also think that a flail can be, depending on how it's set up, dangerous to you. Because let's say you have a long flail, generally, historically, they should be longer, so this can't fly back and hit your hand. But if you look at the Okinawan weapon that they say that they used, which is the nunchuka, or nunchucks is what people call them, it can come back and hit you right in the hand. You swing, boom, hit your hand. Or also, I was told by Reno Labanthau, the old instructor when I used to do RNS, a Screamer, or Kali, whatever you want to call it. It's all, he had like a certain island he was from. He just used all the titles because they're state art from where he was at. There's so many different ones developed by the islanders there. But he talked about a guy who got a hold of him and was all proud of him when he was younger. Back in the day, they used to do a lot of stick fighting when they were younger, for real. Like, people would go out and literally fight each other. But supposedly he got mad and hit somebody in the head, bounced off the guy's skull, didn't break the guy. Sorry, I need to do that. Right? A lot of noise. It bounced off the gentleman's skull, or guy's skull, his enemy, or whatever the guy he was mad at. Bounced off the skull, came back and hit him and injured him badly, busted his face from the impact and it bouncing back. Which I could see that. I mean, the flail weapons can be dangerous to you as well. Even when we tested the Kusari Gamma. The fondo, or the weight on the end on the kusari, the chain. You got to be very careful. Those things come back, and there are ways to make it where it's safer when they'll come back and hit you. But yeah, I mean, there's some advantages and disadvantages to them as well. So why they don't use them, they're afraid of it being a danger and entanglements, what they say. Because I'm sure there's ways to make it legal. I know that there's people that use flails and LARPing, with that can't be over a certain length of cord, and they just kind of have a really light ball on it. Knives over an inch are illegal. Nathan Norman, you're in the UK then, right, or in England? Yeah, I can imagine that. Here, there's no length limit, so I can carry any swords if I want down the street. Rapiers do not make you invincible. Rapiers, a lot of people don't realize this. Rapiers, they are extremely long, a lot of them historically, and they're not light. They're heavy, so they can parry other blades, but they're just focused on thrusting. So most people think small swords and back swords and stuff that were fought with in a gentlemanly manner as well are rapiers, and that modern fencing is actually rapiers. Modern fencing is more small swords than rapiers. So the problem we get here is that the earlier rapiers aren't that common. I want to test one on the channel. We have somebody right now, I'm trying to think of his name on the top of my head, is going to be trying to procure us one. He's going to try to get one for the channel to test a good rapier that's very stiff and will perform like a historical rapier and extremely long. Remember, they're not light. They're just balanced really well for thrusting, and they're actually should be extremely stiff. So they were sometimes used. I mean, we have depictions they're used in plate armor. You know, people wearing plate and still using a rapier. So that's very unusual considering swords, and you know, it's a really light, thin, dainty blade. You would picture it just breaking. But I know that Matt Easton, I believe it was, Matt Easton took some thinner blades and tried extreme hits. You can go watch it on Matt Easton's channel, Scully Laboratoria, and I'm friends with him on Facebook. They beat the heck out of this. I don't know if it was a fencing foil or actually it was. I think it was a rapier style blade or an FA style blade or something. They beat the heck out of it. And although they warped it and damaged it and cut into it, chipped into it with different types of arming swords, I think they even used a long sword. They never were able to actually break it, even though you would think it would break. You know, even though I'm sure it was, you know, I watched the videos beating it out of the way and folding and bending, you know, contorting, but it didn't damage it. I'm sorry, I'm trying to go through here and see what everybody's got. Can you parry a rapier? I think I just kind of covered that, Nathan one. Yes, I believe you could. Is it going to be as easier if when you say broadsword, it depends on what kind of sword you're speaking of. A bastard sword, that's hand and half for a war sword. I mean, a bastard sword usually means you can kind of get another hand on it if you want. They're heavier than one-handed blades. They start coming about like in the 13th century. We see stuff similar to that. And a bastard sword is usually not quite a real long sword. It's not quite, you know, full long sword, even though people still consider them long swords and say you use long sword techniques with them from the manuals and stuff. But yeah, you're going to have a lot of force, and you have to be very careful how you parry. You probably have to parry up towards the thicker, because the blade is thicker as it tapers. So you parry up towards as normal with the strong, because that is the strong of the blade. When you're up near the hilt, where you normally have your rings or your bell or whatever you're going to have on your rapier, it only has rings or the period. You're going to parry up near the, if you have to actually parry it, like if try to block it or stop it for some reason, it's going to be up there, and you're going to kind of want to try to catch it up near that area that's strong. The actual strong of a cutting blade is the first 3/4 of the blade. And that's why I've done videos where I've shown the actual tip of a sword, if it's shaped properly and able to take it, because some very extremely tapered swords where you're used the tip to thrust with have percussion points further up because the front's so small. There's a small amount of metal that comes to a point that your percussion point where it doesn't vibrate as much and so on is farther up. But like on a Viking age sword or broader style blades that are designed for cutting, you know, where they're less profile taper, you could cut all the way up to the tip. I mean, the actual tip will, and even the tip on those swords will cut through gloss and stuff into the flesh, you know, on the, you know, if you're cutting with the tip of it, not cutting through bone or something, or heavy armor or something, the tip of those blades will cut directly into you, and they have the most speed force. So that is the strong of the cut, you know, the actual tip. You know, it's going to cut through if it's got the edge on it. It's actually, and rapiers are sharp. That's another thing. A lot of people think that rapiers were not sharp. There are some small swords that are used for thrusting that were not sharp at all. I mean, there were some of them no edge at all that people were carrying later century that were mostly just for thrusting, and they had tried to make them where you could parry with them but get a good point. So I wouldn't use a sword that doesn't have an edge. I'm sorry. But I would say you can. It's just harder to do because you have a lot of force if somebody's swinging at you like that. But then again, if they're going to use that type of power and step in and be committed, if you're able to outmove them or to parry it in such a way where you don't have to try to stop it outright, which you should be doing, you should be able to redirect your point and finish him, or he's also going to have the disadvantage of trying to engage you coming in. If you step offline, you can be able to get him with the right door. I'm not saying that one's got an advantage over the other. It all has to do with the people knowing how to use the weapons that they have. Monk the Mongol, yeah, the flexibility of the blade saves by spraying shock. Yeah, you're right, it does. That's one part of it too. The blade flexes. You can see in our videos where people see blades whipping in the air if they hit things as they cut through, depending on what happens, or they hit one of the skulls. No matter what your blade alignment is on one of the analog ballistic gel heads I have, and you cut into it, sometimes the head moves and stuff. And what happens is a lot of times, even when I'm cutting the poor man's tatami, people will go, "Oh, it's scooped," or it did this or did that. It wasn't my hand that caused that. It was the target as you're going in. You say you're going in at this angle and it starts moving. The target's moving, and that's what causes the curve on the head too. As you cut the head and the skull's trying to resist the cut, you'll see the blade turn and stuff. And as this happens, it will cause the blade to contort and move in all different kinds of weird wave patterns. And if the sword's able to bend and then bend back, that's a good sign that you've got good steel. If it bends and stays bent, then it's not a properly heat-treated sword, or not a very good steel that has any ability to snap back. And some blades aren't able to be bent like, you see these ones that you see from Albion or something where they're modern spring steel, and you can bend them almost back in theory. They put them in rigs and stuff and bend them, and they go back to shape. Some of those, if you see them bend them and they kind of slowly let them go back, if they were to bend them and just let go, they'd have some really weird effects there where the blade might not pop back true. There's only so much steel can do. I mean, it can do a lot, but I put a backdrop up because I thought it looked better than a mundane bedroom where I do my gaming. It doesn't really look bad. You can kind of see there's a window back there, but yeah, I just kind of hung something up because I got the idea from Shad at Shadversity, but he had this nice little cubicle thing. If you go look at his, when he did his last time, and I was there and said hi, hail to him on the show and everything, he had like a bookshelf thing behind him, but I don't think it was real bookshelves. It was like a cubicle thing. It was pretty entertaining. I was going to try to find something better for the background here, or try to set the computer up somewhere else, but I didn't want to move my computer to. I mean, I could have set it up where I have all my arms and armor, kind of like Scal does. Scalagrim had all my, armors, Japanese armor and everything hanging. And I was like, it's not hanging behind me here, so I just felt weird having a window and an air conditioner and a bed behind me. Sorry, it just feels weird. It doesn't feel right. Glaive, I haven't seen anything cutting with a glaive. I've seen very thin Dane axes, and I've seen them cut stuff because they're so thin, because different axes are different. They have different profiles and different ways they're set up. I've seen them cut because they're so sharp. I've seen people use naginata to cut with, and yes, a naginata is very similar to glaive somewhat, but an actual true European glaive, I haven't seen anybody cut with one in a video. That would be entertaining if I could get a hold of a glaive. Anybody knows where to get one or could help us procure one in some way, I would love to test it. That would be something. Yeah, you said that too. I'm sorry, Kuba. I noticed you already brought the naginata into it. I'm hiding my harem. Yeah. Now, if you will give me large donations, and YouTube will probably believe this, I will unveil my harem to you. No, that was a joke. Yeah, no, on YouTube, they probably take me down and say that I actually offered it. I'm not sure on the side swords. I have to do some testing on it to find out. Probably like on the analog heads, and I'm going to try I know Scalagrim makes a full body, but he uses the synthetic, and he's using PVC pipe. That's what I use for pulling. He's using the same thing on the rib cage. I don't know what else he has in there, but I've been looking at his episodes on trying to figure out exactly. If I got a mannequin body, I'm pretty sure I could do, if I had enough gel at the time, to do a full torso. Maybe not joined with a head, but just to do a body. I would love to do some testing, like cutting into something that simulates ribs. I know that some people will say use a pig carcass, but nowadays, anytime I try to do anything, and a lot of programs use pig heads, pig carcasses, so, hogs, whatever, to test on, because it's supposed to be similar to human flesh and bone. That on YouTube now you get a lot of negativity. There's a lot of people that, even though the animal is probably going to be eaten by me, because if I do meat, I actually eat it. Like, I will make sure I put something down or do it in an area where it's clean enough I can rinse it off, like it's some animal I processed from hunting, and go use it afterwards. I'm not going to throw something away. I do eat meat. I'm sorry. But there's people who will complain like you're torturing an animal. Like, I mean, you have something that came from a butcher market that you bought, spent a lot of money if you got a big piece, and you were to cut into a hog like a lot of people do, or a pig. And they will honestly say that you're, doing something wrong and flag your video, start trying to like tell, Facebook to take you down. I guess there are people that are vegans or against hunting or something, or just eating meat in general. And I'm sorry, it's a Viking channel, and in theory, everything's based off Viking age stuff, so and ancient European stuff. And I know there's some very few people historically that did those type of practices, but I don't see how that should alarm them when they can go to the store and see a guy buying hamburger or bacon. Why are they reporting that guy? I don't get it. I guess it's just something about using the sword and hitting it first before you, as a test medium, that upsets them. Yeah, the buckler, in my mind, I've always seen the buckler, how you hold it in your hand. It's just an umbo. It's almost like, I wonder what happened. It's like, did somebody have one of the earlier period shields that were larger and just decide to make a smaller one and see if you could carry it around town easier, which makes total sense? Or did somebody have a larger one and he get damaged and he just cut it down and go, can I still fight with it? Or he just preferred his smaller and they kept making smaller ones until they just decided that was a style of combat on its own. But the good thing about the buckler, you get the story of the swashbucklers where they carry the sword, and the buckler would hang on the top, supposedly. This is one of the legends, so I don't know if it's true. There'll probably be somebody argues this isn't true, but I've heard it before. And it would make this swishing or swashing sound as the buckler rattled against his blade as he carried it, and that was later century than the Viking Age. But the point is, I think they've always had smaller round shields, and that's basically what a buckler is. It's just a large Viking round, smaller. You have your little mini one, then you have your medium-sized shields and your larger rounds. And they're very similar in some ways, but you do change combat as they get smaller. That's why you see Roland or Zeka talk about the lenticular shields or the dome shields, and the way the Franks use these shields. The Franks would hold it directly out in front of them. I'm sorry, you can't see my hand. But they would hold the shield out in front of them or up close to their body. In most of the drawings, it doesn't look like they're holding it like you would hold a Viking shield to fight with a flat and use it as an angle. And it was a reactive shield where they keep the sword back, is what it looks like in the drawings. And as the shield got hit, that's how they let it tilt, was because the edge wasn't getting hit straight on. It was domed. So you're hitting a dome that kind of gives and tilts the shield on its own. So it wouldn't be used exactly. If it's that dome, you can't use it like a flat shield. But the buckler is more like the flat shield because it's, it's just like that umbo. Like that's all you've got there, maybe a little extra ringing around it. So, I mean, you can almost use some umbos if you put a handle on it, where you put this little ring around it as a buckler from the Viking Age. So it's pretty entertaining when you look at it that way. And center bosses were used forever. It wasn't until later on, until after the Normans invaded, and you start seeing the kite shields, and we still see bosses on them. Even though some people say they used the bosses on some, and some they didn't, that it was actually strapped on. But when we start looking at shields historically, there's so much strapping. I mean, you'll find so many different straps that can be held so many different ways. Some for riding, if you're on horseback at that time period. Some for on foot. Some if you wanted to point forward. I mean, if you start looking at it, you could hold it in different ways, and so it must have been useful for them to change it about, whatever kind of match they were in. They're fighting single combat. They might have wanted the point of their heater when they had heaters sticking out. They might have wanted it held if they were trying to use it more in a wall type situation, like a regular shield, or straight across with their hand sticking out if they were riding reins. So shields are so unusual, it's hard to figure out exactly every use for them other than from drawings and so on, because they kind of, I guess, thought it was common knowledge, at the time. Craig's Mazer, recover and repeat next blow as quick as a katana from Kuba. It depends. I'm going to be honest, katana, everybody thinks they have a specific weight, length, and size, and that's because they do modernly almost. I mean, it's because it became a name, katana. But as you were talking about early Japanese swords, they have different weights, different lengths. And it's not just going up to the nodachi, it's just they have different weights, different lengths. And different. So as long as you get one within the same ranges of weights and everything, it would be the same. Or you're talking using it one-handed or two-handed on the Mazer. That's the other question. If you're using it two-handed or using it one-handed, depending on the hilt and depending on the katana, and are you using the katana? Katanas are generally used two-handed always. Katanas were the later century dueling version, though. Earlier, you have other forms of Japanese blades that changed in weight, how much they were none of them really straight, but some of them were straighter than others on used against armor and so on for thrusting horns and what have you. But usually katanas were more of a sidearm. I would say that you could recover just as quick, even with a arming sword. If it's balanced properly, you can recover just as quick as a two-handed katana. Because a katana, I mean, is more blade heavy, and like arming swords are more. The Craig's Mazer is basically blade heavy too, so I would say it would probably be equivalent to the katana. I mean, it does have its own balance though compared to the katana. So I'd have to experiment with them, and it actually depends on sword types themselves. It depends on which, that's the way to put it, which Craig's Mazer compared to which katana. It's like that's because even modern katanas are in different weight ranges. They're all the same length, and sometimes the handles can vary a little bit on how long those are. Carry a buckler to get around the knuckle duster laws. Oh, and use it to punch buckler. Possibly. I mean, I don't know what they would say and carry modernly with a sword, especially if it's legal to carry swords here now. That'd be kind of entertaining to see what they said about carrying the shield with it. I honestly think there's no laws against shields here. They don't have anything written down for that. I know that if you're a criminal, this sounds crazy, if you're a felon in the U.S., you cannot be caught with body armor. This means like ballistic armor, like modern Kevlar or ballistic vest or anything. But what's funny in the clause, because most people don't realize this, it states you cannot have plate armor either. So I was wondering if there was any felons that lived in the U.S. and owned plate, medieval plate armor and had ever gotten charged for it. I think what they meant is more like Ned Kelly's type stuff. If anybody knows about Australia, there's a famous Ned Kelly, and he took plows and used them and shaped them into armor. They made these helmets and these breastplates, which usually is all modernly is done as something to cover your skull, but these were full face pieces, which is quite ridiculous and heavy, and full body and hung down over their groin and all that. Well, they would rob banks, and at the time period, they got dimples in it, like where they hit it, but it was stopping the rounds, and supposedly they thought they were ghosts and stuff. That's kind of hard to believe, because if I shot at somebody and I heard a big ding or ricochet, I would assume they were wearing some kind of armor. But we found out 12 gauge steel, modern steel. It might have to be a hair thicker on old wrought iron, but just a hair, because remember they're almost identical in a lot of ways, would stop ballistics. I mean, it stops handguns, like anything like a 40 caliber Smith & Wesson, a 9mm, 22. Now remember, I'm not quoting Armalite rifles or something here. We're not talking about 5.56 millimeter. We're not talking about 223. We're not talking about anything like that, 30-06. We're talking about modern handguns, which are more equivalent to early firearms, because the early rifles, like muskets and stuff, yeah, if you have 12 gauge steel, a lot of it I found out from Christopher Poore, and it's in the video where I talked to him, that a lot of the armor that they were using to stop firearms, like the breastplate and the helms, which is, remember, even the Japanese, just the helm, just the breastplate, not every other piece, because that would be so heavy it'd be ridiculous. It would just be thicker steel, but it wouldn't be hardened. because hardened steel can be thinner. You can have 18 gauge plate armor and stop melee weapons with it if it's hardened properly, because it kind of gives and snaps back. Flaw is rounds can split it and go through. That's the problem. But now, of course, there's heavier gauges of hardened steel too. Like I've heard a 14 gauge helmet that's hardened properly. Somebody shot it with a 357 Magnum. I mean, this is a story I wasn't there, but I've heard it a million times, so I've heard it from a certain group. I believe it's true, and just ricocheted off. Of course, it could be the way it hit. He supposedly shot it several times, and it's a dome helmet that somebody made armor, and he actually went through the process of hardening it, ricocheted off, and it didn't even make dents. But the problem is, if it had hit a flatter piece, who knows? When you use a rifle or something, it would probably split, dimple a little bit, not much, because it's hard to make it through. That's why, Swedish spring steel plates that they used to use in Type 4A vests to stop assault rifles, as they call them, ARs, which I don't think they're really assault rifles, but armor-light rifles or any type of thing like that, or an AK. Those type of vests had Swedish spring steel in them, and that would crack, and they knew it was going to crack. When you hit the spring steel, they knew that was going to crack by the round, but then the Kevlar under it would absorb the rest of the force. So, I mean, it's kind of that principle. Japanese swords were not made with the best iron or steel. They did have some good steel in them, and just like all early swords, they used good steel on the edge and so on, and they used different grades of steel. And they try to, like modernly, when they forge a Japanese sword to make a Japanese sword in the traditional way, they use modern metals that are pure and have to add carbon to it to do the folding process, because if they folded good steel, they would end up reducing the carbon to such a low degree that it would be no good. So, I mean, that's basically all that process was for, was to get just the right amount of carbon to distribute it evenly to get a good sword. And traditional Japanese katanas are not spring steel. If they get bent, they are bent. They even talk about it historically, how they would have to hammer them back. If they got bent, they had special rigs or jigs to bend them back in before they resharpen them. So we're not putting the sword down, but historical blades, the Vikings had a lot of them, would get bent and have to be bent back depending on how they were made. Some swords were like spring steel and would spring back pretty much on their own. It just depends, I mean, on what quality you're talking about, what era, and how many different grades of metal. But those different metals, if you work with them properly, you know what you're doing, you create something that won't bend easily and be very, very resilient and not accidentally be over-hardened and break easily. That's the other thing. If you were to take steel and try to harden it and not harden it properly, you can harden it to the point where it becomes brittle, and that's not good either. So I think our ancestors were working with that problem, trying to get something that would endure what they needed it to endure, do what it needed to do, hold a good edge, but then not break, and that was the whole goal. Oh, the samurai armor. I wanted input. I'm glad I'm still on this long, because that was a good question. Let's try to pronounce your name there. Apperceptive Bibulus. I hope I pronounced that right. I don't know. I just did it. What we plan on doing is Michael J. Astorita over at Blue Star Enterprises, which is the U.S. outlet for the samurai armor, the Iron Mountain Armory, which is, I think it's Japanese-armor.com if you want to go by there and check out their armors. Wants to see me kind of build up, is what he thought. So I'm thinking about doing something like maybe a Neolithic test, like maybe a spear that's actually something like our early ancestors would use, or an early Native American would use, or something made out of chert, basically, or flint, like a Stone Age weapon, as a lot of people call it. I was thinking about doing a video like that and just see what it does to start off, and do it in pieces, sort of. Start off with that. It may be all in one video. It may be in separate videos if there's more testing involved. I've thought of a lot of people who want to see Viking versus Samurai stuff. I was thinking about doing Viking Age testing against it, like using Viking Age weapons, just to see what kind of effect they would have from that period. And then I want to test some traditional Japanese weapons, but as you've seen, they've already tested a Yari on it. They've already tested katana on it. So since they've already done these type of testing, I know I could probably do those tests differently and probably put a little more force than when I saw in the videos and use different techniques than were used. But I'm not putting down their test. I've already seen what they did, and I believe that's a fair enough test. That testing the European style spears, which I have more of because I don't have a traditional Yari. Testing European style weapons would be a fun thing to do. So I was thinking about doing that, and I'm thinking about maybe testing some bronze against it. But I don't know if I want to do that first because let's say the bronze spearhead performs really good against it. Then no one's probably going to want to watch the others because they're going to go, "Oh, I was going in there, and I was going to stick it through pretty good," you know. But I don't think anything's going to go completely through the arm. That's what I want to explain to you. I don't think anything's going to like go through and kill the man behind it. I'm picturing the kind of extreme force I use. There might be some little, you know, holes I might be able to punch in certain areas in it. But I want to test the armor, not the gaps or the niches, because that would be silly for me to go up there and go, "Oh, I'm going to check this armor out and stab it right over the armpit to start off." That would be the dumbest test in the world. You know, it'd be like, "There's no armor there, Thrand. It's, you know, it's just lots of silk and patty cloth. You know, it's, yeah, not impressive. You know, to take extreme gambits and you couldn't put under your arm to protect there." So, yeah, we're not going to do that. Although they do have pieces that are brigandine style pieces that look like a little hexagonal fabric. If you've seen it before, it has metal in it. But they do make those at Iron Mountain Armor. He wants to send me some of that. Now that I may test under the arms in different areas where that covers, because that's just like the European Knight had. And yes, they were available. They just weren't as common. I mean, it depends on the suit. Some people wore it, so don't get it wrong. And people argue with me that every Japanese warrior had it, and every Bushi samurai, and you know, no, I'm saying that it was worn and it was not worn too. So it just depends. It depends on the person and if they wanted the extra weight or they needed the protection or what have you. But I'm thinking about doing it that way. If everybody likes that idea, let me know. Try different eras in different time periods. You know, like I was thinking Neolithic, maybe bronze, because I have the old Burgess bronze stuff. But I will test stuff that's feasible, like maybe the bronze spear. I'm not going to go out there with a bronze sword and try to cut through it knowing that it's just going to damage the bronze edge some and it's not going to cut through it because that's just not happening. I already know that. I mean, maybe thrust with one of the swords. It's more taper for thrusting, like an Al 2 or something. But I wouldn't go up there and try to just hack through it. That's just a silly video. I don't see that. The only things that might do something to it and test the metal and see how well it is. So to speak. Maybe test the Kusari a little, you know, so on. Oh, all measures can be one. Yeah, measures are using one hand. That is true. But I was saying, I was asking you if the guy was trying to wield it, you know, in your mind. I was asking in this respect, how do you picture the guy using it? The extra hand does help the katana recover quickly, but remember, it's not counterbalanced in any way with having a pummel. Now, pummels don't necessarily counterbalance, but they do help bring blade balance to make it less blade heavy. To a degree. I mean, they're not it's not like some big old heavy weight back here just for that purpose, but they do that to give the sword a proper function. So what I was sitting there thinking is with the katana as being blade heavy, the backhand is pretty much what that is. That's what helps you control it and give you the proper control over the blade and recovery when you're cutting with it. The measure, the way it's used from the wrist, I think you can recover quick enough. I've been able to take heavier Viking age swords and recover quick enough to do the same cuts that a katana would do one after the other. So that's why I would say, I think it would work. Sorry about that. I mean, I know she just put that up and I wasn't even paying attention to it. Measure is basically a giant knife. And I've heard lots of different theories why. Because the people weren't allowed to carry swords. Technically, the Shad went over that. That's not necessarily true. They were allowed to carry swords. You had to have swords, and you supposedly had to have armor in one of the texts. So one of the myths about it is that the Measure was a knife. But I think he's probably more right. It had to do with the guild thing. Certain guilds were allowed to make knives, and certain guilds were allowed to make sword blades. Well, the problem is they weren't allowed to make the other, go against their arrangements and so on, and it caused a problem. So what they did is made a really big knife, that was a sword. So some people started preferring these measures over the other blades because they're really well made. I mean, I kind of believe that. I watched Shad's video on that. And it kind of made sense because I even talked to Roland about it, and he was saying that he didn't know anything like that. He had to have, peasants couldn't have anything but a knife because it wasn't really that way. It's just there was probably more affordable to get the measure than it was to buy these swords. Because the swords are more difficult to make as well. Like a double-edged sword that goes back to the original Spatha types that came on down through history to what we know as the European sword are more difficult to make than a back sword or a knife with a single edge. It's just more difficult to do it with the medieval process. Viking spear versus samurai armor, and katana versus Viking shield. We could do something like that, and I'll have that new shield, so maybe we could test it that way after I've tested it in other ways. That might work, and then kind of blend it all together. I wonder if I should do them as separate episodes or back to back, because the armor I pretty much want it to be a standalone or testing Japanese armor type thing. And I think that's also when Michael Astorita picked me to test it, because he knows I do extreme testing, but he also thought I would utilize stuff other than Japanese, which I know a lot of people don't like that because they'd go, the Japanese armor never faced these weapons. But I think that was his idea, is to pit it against other stuff that they don't have available to them, because of course he could get somebody to go out there with the Yari and retest it multiple ways, get some martial artist or something, and and test it with some more katanas and stuff like that. But it wouldn't be the same thing as having me tested with different European things. I think that was kind of his idea of wanting us to get a hold of the armor, because he really helped us and aided us by giving us 2 sets of armor instead of 1, and so forth. And honestly, he did admit that. It's because he thought we'd tear one up and not worry about it. And he thought if he sent 1 armor, no one would want to tear that armor up. I know it sounds insane, but that was his theory. Beardshire, I have a cold steel measure. I can see that. It's a bit cumbersome. You're saying it's a kind of a heavy blade, then. Well, see, like I said, it depends on the blade itself. I know there's some measures that are lighter, just like falchions. Everybody thinks falchions are extremely heavy, and we haven't found any big historical examples of some really heavy falchions. So what was the point to them then? I mean, they'd be great butcher knives or big cutting knives for cutting people that weren't wearing heavy armor, but they were done when people were wearing a lot of armor. So did they work good against armor, being real thin blades? Because it seems like the blade would get damaged more. Do we have some in these drawings that we're seeing that we didn't recover that were really heavy and more like, you know what I'm saying, like big swords with heavy blades? We don't know. I mean, that's the problem. Most of the ones that we recovered are fairly thin, and you can tell because they've rusted through in the areas of, where the edge is. So that does give it a good cutting profile, though. I like the longsword, and I like great swords. I have experimented with the techniques. Now, I have fought in the SCA with great swords and with all different types of bastard, hand and a half, long swords, stuff like that. I do utilize the techniques, and I love the swords. So have I actually trained in it specifically from some specific manual? No. But I do understand how the swords function and what's plausible with them in combat, like what you can do with them, what you can't do. Because when you get to a certain size sword, it changes from a sword to almost a polearm. I mean, that'd be the easiest way to explain it to you. It's a sword that functions like a polearm at a certain point. That's why I really don't think a sword is heavy as the claymore, which is not a Mondante. It's not a later century great sword. But I don't think it would be used with half swording. It doesn't seem like it's very plausible. I mean, you could maybe grab the blade if you had to with your gauntlet and stab somebody, but I don't think it would be used as often. That's what I'm saying. You wouldn't flip it around and do a Mordhau with it. That's what I'm saying. The coins don't even look like it's made for that. But the later century great swords like the Mondante, you can rip open the blade. The way they're used and the big sweeping cuts and how you keep them flowing, because the way they're made, you want to keep the blade moving. It's more like kind of using a polearm. You have to be cautious of where your body's at and move your body with it as you cut. So, yeah, they're a little bit different. It feels like using a polearm. So that's my mind, anyway. it feels to me it's like trying to use a pole. I could do some stuff with them. That's why I would like to get an actual late century greatsword. That was Wayhand or Andante or something. It'd be awesome to do some testing with. And it would be different than the Claymore. They have more reach and less weight normally. Could be less weight. But they're heavier than, quite a bit heavier than long swords. Although some people will even try to pull that, but everything's a long sword. I've seen that. It's pretty ridiculous. At a certain point, you have to classify. There's a difference that this thing is too big, or like a Claymore is too heavy to be used exactly like a longsword properly. Oh, okay. Black Sword Shinobi. I have a Tonto cold steel knife. I bet it's nice. Those are nice blades. I can't believe I've been here another hour. This is ridiculous. I meant to come on and apologize for going off earlier, but I felt bad because I realized some people probably didn't even get in the right chat. They were sitting there waiting the wrong one or something. That's what it looked like to me. I only got 27 people here. Yeah, that's true. All the terms that we use now are descriptive terms. Like you say longsword, and then later century people say broadsword. That's because swords got tailored into fencing type swords where fencing means defending. They tailored it to what we consider that where you're mostly thrusting. So it's a small sword thrusting in the earlier rapiers, and the back swords were designed for cutting, but anything that ended up being like a saber or a back sword for cutting, they started saying they were broadswords, like the famous broadsword or the basket that did the name for it, Claymore, the one that the Scots use, a lot of times with the targe. That sword basically is considered a broadsword, but it's broad compared to the other blades of the time period. Is why the name came about. So it's a comparison thing. Longsword, you could say, bring me my longsword, it's the longest sword on the wall. It may not necessarily mean it's a true longsword modernly in a hand and a half or two-handed sword. And most longswords modernly are two-handed. So meant to be used two-handed, although they're light enough you can use them one-handed. They're just balanced and longer to be used two-handed. Battle-ready wall hangers, the new fantasy sort of not really designed to be used. Yeah, I would love to get a glaive. If I get a glaive, I'm noticing that again. Somebody brought it up earlier. If somebody makes a glaive for me or gets a glaive for me, contact me and I will test it. If somebody get it to me, if I have to mount the head, I'll try to mount the head on a pole I have a shaft. Because I know that's hard to ship the whole thing. It's easier to send a pole arm head because they're heavy than it is to send the entire thing. I like short swords. We've done a lot of stuff with short swords on here. You might want to look through the videos and maybe look up short sword. I think I put that in a lot of titles, even some of the daggers that verge on short swords. We've tested quite a few daggers, because I hate to say a lot of them. Medieval shop verge on the larger daggers. They're not smaller ones, although we have done some smaller ones from them. So they're in between. They're basically, like one of them was a true short sword. Some of them are kind of that length where you can go, this is a really long dagger, or it's a short sword. So it's your opinion. Now, if I had a time machine, I would want to go see everything probably. But I'd want to go around touring, see everything, every major battle. Now that would be awesome to see every major battle. Not that I love gore or people dying or something like that. Just want to watch every single one. See how they really took place, what the tactics look like, how the fighting. I'd want to watch everybody's fighting style from every time period with all the weapons, and then I'd come back and show you all how I saw it and what it looked like to me. That's probably what I would do. So, hey, these guys are wrong. These guys are right. This is cool. This is what it looked like. That would be awesome. But I would want to go to the Viking Age, most certainly. No, sorry, you would already know that. Right around the 9th century would be the time to be. I'd want to see everything that's going on. It'd be the most targeted place of interest. But I'd want to go through every historical battle since the beginning of time to see everything. I'm sorry. I'd get so intrigued that I probably wouldn't even make it back to show you all. Apologize. Probably would have dying on the battle or something on two sides, because I'm kind of nuts like that. I don't think you're supposed to interfere with time. Oh yeah, it would end all the guessing. I don't know if we'd have historians anymore. You could just like go back and record it anonymously or something, and then have videos of it moderately show everybody. It would end all the naysayers and people arguing about something. They know exactly what happened. If it was embellished, we'd know that it didn't take place anything like that. You know, we go, wait a minute. Our spies tell us with all their video that this is what took place. They lied to us. It'd be pretty crazy. I just hope we wouldn't be disappointed. Go back then and find out all that stuff was made up. 100%. Yeah, the Bible falchion looks like it could have been two-handed. Yes, I've seen two-handed versions of falchions. They are quite common on modern reproductions, I'm saying. It could be one-handed as well. So it just depends, because they show one-handed falchion being held way back with shield out in some of the depictions. So I've got 26 people here. I'm hoping y'all are enjoying this. I'm sorry I stayed on too long. I probably need to go soon. My wife, Caddy's going to be mad. I need to cook some dinner. And I plan on doing some videos this week, so I'll be looking forward to that. Brad Lynn, our digital artist, he does all our artwork. He does the intros. He did the Conan thing at the end, ThegnThrand. We actually have shirts and stuff like that in Viral Style, too, that he's done the artwork for specifically for the shirts. So if you want to go by Viral Style, you can go to my page and click there. Or you go check him out on Facebook. But he's working on a video. Stop beating around the bush here. He's working on a video right now on the Iron Mountain Armory type thing. I'm not going to explain what it is. It's kind of a surprise. Michael Astorita had talked to me a while back, and I talked to him, and then I noticed some testing that had been done by some other people, and we're basically not necessarily debunking the testing, but talking about it, like explaining what took place in it. Some people I think misinterpreted it. But it should be a very entertaining video if it turns out well. We'll see what happens with it. Cow's beak. No, I haven't. Similar, but not a cow's beak. Oh yeah, if I had a time machine, that's why I love time travel movies. Most people might not know this, but anything with time travel in it, I love. The only movie that I've never understood, and I didn't think it turned out very well, and I don't want to open a can of worms or have something sort here, is Looper. There's people who love that movie. Ryan Johnson did it, and I'm sorry, I don't think the man understands economics. I don't think he understands time travel. Now, I don't want him to hear this and like be all, "Who's this Thrand guy? This is horrible," and go to YouTube and have him take me down or something. But no, I was like, I don't hate him or nothing, but I just don't think he did a very good job on that movie. It was cool for shock value, emotional effect, but it didn't make any sense to me when I started looking at how time travel is supposed to work and how we theorize it, because no one's ever done it, so no one knows. But yeah, or if they have done it, they haven't done it. I haven't seen Infinity War yet. Simon Dean, sorry to call you Sean. Simon Dean. No, I haven't seen Infinity War. I wanted to see it. I usually go with Marquez, believe it or not. I've known him since like back in the day, since we were kids. He'd normally call me up and go, but he hasn't been real interested in going to movies lately, so I haven't gone. And if I can't take my wife and kids and everybody, and the kids are like, especially now, the Lucky Master is 3, he can't sit there that long. He would be up doing weird things like trying to raid the place and take people's popcorn and stuff. It'd be horrible, especially when he got bored. Oh, you live near a runestone from 900 AD? Ah, cool. Quasquetal? Hope I pronounced your name right. Quasquetal. It's Quasquetal. Interesting. I'd love to see a picture of it. If you find me on Facebook, or if you want to get a hold of me or send it to me or send me a picture of the runestone, you can do it at ThegnThrand@gmail.com. Don't confuse that one with the other one. I don't check it often. It's ThegnThrand@yahoo.com. I just mostly use that as a PayPal ID and very rarely use that email. But the Gmail one, ThegnThrand@gmail.com, you can send me a picture of it. I might look into it and see what I can find out. Ah, it's in the church from 1100. That's very interesting. Yeah, there are some runestones in the U.S. Some people question whether they were faked or something. I just have a weird feeling. I think they were not fake. I'm sorry. The Vikings, not me bragging about them or something, traveled so many places, and they didn't document things like they do nowadays. They didn't go there and just try to keep the place if it was difficult to keep or something. And they didn't have the resources to have people continually going there, like trying to set up a colony or something. But yeah, I would not doubt that they that they are real. I mean, people debate that they're not, but I believe they're real runestones. But they argue about the runes, and that they're not just right or something. And the problem is, no one wrote exactly the same. You didn't have a school where young Vikings went to and went, oh, we learned how to write runes like this, and they changed regularly, and each person wrote them their own way, and write backwards and forwards. There's little ways when they went to the younger Fourth Arc where they started using little dots and dashes and stuff to distinguish, in a shorthand type way, which letter it was. And sometimes they didn't use those. You had to guess by knowing the language. So I don't think that they know what they're talking about with stones. There's so many different ones. I think they're probably real. That's my belief. Oh, Asimov. Yeah. My wife, Caddy, likes a lot of stuff. The End of Eternity, and that's from Traxida. Oh, okay. Well, I'll see you later. Sorry about that. I noticed that someone's linking here. Don't even try to get me to pronounce his name right now that it says. I probably won't get it right. I apologize. It says E on it. I wanted to thank everybody earlier. I'm going to have to go soon myself, like I just told you. I feel bad, but I can't stay on all day. It'd be ridiculous, too. You'd probably get bored of me. But I was going to say that I want to thank the people earlier who actually gave some donations to chat. Because we're not doing as good as we used to. As people just gave me donations, I thought there was going to be the super chat. There's going to be these extreme, intricate questions that I needed to answer. Instead, I've been going through here just trying to answer what I see people posting. Because that's what I was doing, and I had several people just pop up and say, like, hail from Denmark, and give me like 50, I guess, of their money, what have you. So I was like, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that. If you do pay to have a question answered, I will try even harder to answer it than I have been, but I don't think I can try any harder because I usually try to answer everything to the best of my ability. Oh, I have Botkin points, and I received them. And I had a video about that not too long ago, and I plan on testing those. What we're trying to do is get a real war bow or a long bow to test with. We're looking at one that's, I think it's 90 to 120 pounds. Let's make sure I can pull that properly and everything and work with it. But it has to do with the length of the arrows. If I'm not mistaken, it's like 28 or 29 inch arrows are like the lower draw, and 32 inch arrows or something are the, if you draw it back that far, it's the full poundage. But I mean, that would give us a range between something higher than what you normally see in typical hunting bows, and then be a bow that actually operates like a self bow. That as you draw it, it's not some kind of compound bow or modern bow. I was just looking here. Yeah, we'll do the Botkin test. Yeah, typical longsword can be a hand and a half sword. That's a hand and a half sword. Basically. I mean, someone will say they're two-handed. I still say they're longswords, and they have to be pretty much used two-handed the way they're balanced. But for the speed and the type of fencing they do them, yes, they're a hand and a half. You can switch to one-handed anytime. They're extremely light, and a lot of the later century greatswords. I mean, even Matt Easton's shown with the one he has, you can easily just thrust out with one hand either way. And they're not so heavy you can't do that. I can even do that with the Scottish sword I have, the Claymore. I can thrust one-handed with it. I would want to try to swing it around one-handed because it would take such big, grandiose swings with the Scottish sword. It'd be very difficult to fight anybody with without just winding up and swinging at it, which would probably get you killed. Not to mention that, yes, the weight of it stuff, it has follow-through and carry-through if you do a basic swing. In an actual fight, I think you do a lot more. For some reason, if you were fighting without a lot of armor, you'd be doing a lot more shorter cutting techniques with it, and it would still be devastating. So you'd want that sword out there first, is what I'm going to then you'd lose a little power, but you'd still have the reach, and what you did hit would be impressive. Oh, I'm glad you appreciate me taking my time. I didn't mind. I'm going to be honest, I meant this to be about an hour and a half. Not over 2 hours, and now I've got, well, almost 2.5 hours here. So I apologize, and I'm going to have to thank your wife Caddy for putting up with this. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed our talk today. I hope everything was answered the way you wanted. And please be sure and click on the bell down below if you are subscribed and want to make sure that you get the notifications, because I've been worried people haven't been getting notifications, and I've been told that. I think May 7th, we're going to be doing a strike style thing. It's, just because the YouTube regime don't want to do that. I'll probably be uploading something on Facebook. It sounds crazy. I don't make any money there. But I might be uploading some episodes on Facebook and putting a trailer here, and I'll tell you how to get to it. But that's just because I'm going to participate with York's probably on that. I like him. He's a great guy. We're going to be making the shield. I don't know if I brought it up in this one. I'll be making a shield to try to compete with his modern shield, but do the same things. And I'll be trying to send him a piece of it, because I can't send a large one in the mail, so he can test his stuff on it as well and see if it performs as well as his extremely heavy polycarbonate shields. I think it's going to be heavier than mine, but I don't know. I have to weigh the shield that I make and see how it turns out. Oh, that's awesome, Beardshire. I've noticed you're always on there. You've been watching since the very first video. Yeah. So we started arguing with people about inaccurate history stuff. And I thought that would be the whole program forever, just inaccurate history and us trying to contest it. But it's turned into where sometimes we're just trying to test different techniques and ideas and see if they're plausible. And what we think, or what I think about, I say we because my wife will get on it. He's here, he'd get on it. We all get on it. And I have other friends that do, and I talk to other people online. So we put it all together and then try in my videos to see if I can determine what's better, or what they actually did, or what my view is on it. Oh, not a problem. Anytime. Not a problem. Thank you for being here for the stream. If I didn't have anybody here, it wouldn't have been any fun. I wouldn't have anything to talk about. But anyway, as always, I guess I'm going to say bye now. I hope nobody felt left out, so I came back. As always, farewell.